automated buses or automated vehicles, the first thing we think is, the first thing we need is to define what we understand by automated vehicles, that we've hearing that they are starting to be implemented and be tested worldwide. And we think of a vehicle that it's basically a single unit that has sensors that allow it to move around the city, to move around the freeway with connections with what's in its surrounding, so that it's safe enough that it can move and get to its destination on a timely manner without any major inconvenience. And when we think of connected vehicles, it's a little bit different, because in this case, what we're looking for is of connection between vehicles, and sometimes between vehicles and infrastructure, so that not just they can the collective flow can be safe, but also that collectively they can achieve the highest probably performance as possible. And this is not as new as it seems. When I arrived to my PhD in the University of California, Berkeley in 1998, that's almost 20 years ago, they had already done an experiment in the freeway in which they could run 5 cars at very high speed, very close one another. So this is something that we've been thinking of for a while, and has a lot of potential benefits. On one hand, you can have narrower lanes, so that in the same freeway or in the same path, you can have more vehicles moving along, because you don't take such a wide space for a bus for a car. Also, you can achieve very high speeds at very high density, and therefore there's a promise that eventually the performance of a street or of a freeway can be increased, because the capacity will be higher. But when we think of autonomous buses or connected buses, this is probably what comes to our reality. Like, what are you talking about? How can you think of buses being autonomous, having no driver, and buses being connected, when the reality of buses, most buses worldwide, is like the ones we see here, where the buses move within a mixed traffic, a lot of traffic, very chaotic, and therefore hard to think where this could really achieve a very a safe environment for an autonomous bus. But if we think of the question of this talk, or the motivation, is if it does make sense to think of autonomous and connected buses, to identify some of the benefits that the buses may achieve by getting this technology, and a second and third question, if it's really possible to achieve it. When we think of public transport, autonomous public transport has been here for decades, and it's based on trains. Our metros, for probably 40 decades, have started to be built without a driver, or sometimes with a driver that the only thing the driver does is to open and close the doors, or most of what it does. And therefore, the issue of having metros without a driver, or public transport without a driver, has already arrived. It's already here. In my city here in Santiago, we're building two new metro lines, and both of them are going to be driverless, so and autonomous. So it's very interesting to see this happening. So we have moved from driverless metros directly into driverless cars, and this innovation seems to be ignoring buses. And I wonder if this is a reasonable path for this technology. And if we consider automation in buses, what I think the first step for buses to be autonomous should not be the buses that are operating in mixed traffic, but instead try to identify specific cases. And in this case, I'm going to argue that corridors can be the opportunity for autonomous buses to operate on the first place. Because driverless metros seem feasible because of rails and also because of a fully segregated ways, but buses lack rails. But as I was saying, buses are increasingly being built in segregated corridors, which in some way it's a first step, or it's a great step towards getting closer to what metro achieves, and that's the main promise of bus rapid transit. If we could achieve in the surface something similar to the level of service provided by buses, and the main point here is by operating segregated corridors, you can achieve some of the segregated environment that railways provide for trains. So if you think of the conflicts with other vehicles and pedestrians for a bus in a corridor, those are much easier to predict than for a car moving in regular traffic. The bus that is moving in a corridor, we can predict under which circumstances, in which places, what type of circumstances you will have a conflict with a pedestrian, with a car, with another bus. And therefore, I think that in autonomous buses it's much easier to provide some sort of driverless technology than in the case of a car moving along a city. So it's clear to me that automatizing buses should start with buses operating in corridors. And then the number of buses operating in corridors is increasing. According to our database, brtdata.org, which, by the way, it's one of our main outputs of our Center of Excellence, which provides great information of bus rapid transit infrastructure, technologies, buses, demand, speed worldwide. There are 452 BRT corridors in 205 cities, serving more than 34 million passengers per day, and this is increasing. So therefore, here we have an opportunity to start thinking of this corridor, of this demand, to provide autonomous buses. The benefits, therefore, of providing such an technology would be quite huge. And in some way, I think that in this case, the technology of coordinating buses or controlling buses can become in some way the rails for these buses, and even much more than that. Some of the potential benefits of automated and controlled operation for buses, and I'm going to list some of them, I think are quite relevant and should be considered. First of all, one that is increasingly being, or quite often being, highlighted as a big issue of BRT is how smooth the bus docking at the station is. We have tried several types of technologies, sometimes magnetic technologies, optical, mechanical guidance, and I think that by having sensors on the buses and having a driverless operation, an automated operation, you can achieve a very good and high quality docking at the station, where the bus could dock only a couple of inches away from the station. In terms of safety, of course, every time a bus corridor is reorganized, restructured from mixed traffic into a segregated corridor, we have shown that we have seen that the safety standard of the corridor increases very significantly. I think that this safety achievement of BRT can be further improved if we provide driverless operation for buses, because of course the reaction of the bus governed by these sensors could be much faster and can be predicting conflicts that a driver maybe would never perceive. Another issue is the coordination with traffic signals, and I think that it's also interesting as an opportunity. This is already happening in some places, but I think that by providing this kind of technology in the bus, this communication between traffic signals and buses, especially if it's coordinated along the whole route and not just a single conversation between a bus and a traffic signal, can improve performance also quite significantly. Another one is eco-driving, in which the bus could have much lower fuel consumption and lower emissions by choosing the speed at which the bus will be moving between one station and the other, by choosing how to accelerate, at what rate to decelerate, so that the emissions and fuel is as low as possible. And the two last one I would like to highlight are more operational. One very relevant is the issue of schedules. In many systems especially in the developed world, we have bus services with schedules in which buses are commit to pass through certain stations at certain moments. And this is, I think, is more achievable if the frequency of the buses is low. So if you have, let's say, 4 buses per hour, which in my opinion is a quite low frequency, then it's very relevant to provide some sort of schedule in which you can not only communicate to your users at what time the bus will pass, but at the same time to provide some smooth transfers, so that especially for these low frequency systems, the passengers can transfer to a station without having to wait for the full interval for the next bus to come, for the next transferring bus to come. And in the case of high frequency services, we are used in the developing world to not use schedules. However, we have in the system, even though we have no schedules, some periods of the day where having some schedule would make a lot of sense. For instance, sometimes in weekends, sometimes in low density zones and low frequency areas during the night. And I think that having this autonomous, this control system governing the buses could allow you to provide much confidently the possibility of provide schedules and allowing fast transfers. And the last one, which is going to be the main core of my talk, is the issue of headway regularity. And I will argue here that this headway regularity is not just an extra item, but it's something that the industry has misplaced and has forgotten and has not realized how relevant headway regularity is in the future of the industry. If the buses are not regular, then it's very, very difficult that we can achieve something similar to metro, and the buses will always be considered a second chance alternative compared with other transportation modes as metro or cars. However, if the buses can achieve and can provide a regular service, they can really be considered a key player in urban mobility for the future. So the goal of my talk is going to be into discussing how can we achieve headway regularity, how relevant it is, and at the same time, on the back of our mind, I would like you to consider that how, by having this connected system of buses, we can achieve this regularity. So to enter into the regularity world, I would like to start by thinking of what do people seek when traveling in public transport. And I like to think that the people are most of the time looking for fast service, for low waits, for a comfortable trip, and for a reliable trip. And these are probably attributes that you would associate with metro. If you think of a fast trip, what do you need to do to achieve these attributes? Well, you need to decrease the travel time. The service has to have a lower travel time. For low waits, you need to think of increasing your frequency. For a comfortable trip, you need to think of increasing your transport capacity. For a reliable trip, you need to be thinking of decreasing probably travel time variability. So these are the actions you would like to have. And then if you think of what to do to decrease travel time, you have only one choice. To decrease travel time, the only thing you can do is to increase the speed. If you think of increasing the frequency, however, you have two alternatives. You can either increase the fleet and have more vehicles per hour, or increase the speed, because with the same fleet, if you have a lower cycle time, you will have a high frequency. So you have two alternatives. For a comfortable trip, to increase transport capacity, you have three alternatives. You can increase the fleet, So you have more buses, increase the vehicle size or increase the speed. Because if you increase the frequency, you will be increasing at the same time the capacity, the transport capacity of your system. And for reliability, what you need to have is regular headways, mostly. Therefore, if you think this way, it is no surprise that the industry have put all its efforts in increasing the speed, because by increasing the speed, you allow a fast, a low weight, and a comfortable trip. And reliability has been left as a second element of your performance. Well, if we have some spare time, maybe we can focus on regular headways. And it has been mostly, I think, considered not really. We have not paid attention to this issue. And in my talk today, what I would like to claim is that we need not just to increase the speed, but also have regular headways. The bus rapid transit has been focusing mostly in the word rapid, increased speed. And I think we should be focusing in reliability as well. I'm going to be claiming today that the BRT needs urgently to be rebranded as BRT, Bus Rapid and Reliable Transit. And that's the only way we can really achieve metro-like service. And I'm going to be arguing on these ideas. I hope I keep you interested in the talk. So the first question for those of you that may be new in this topic is why keeping reliability, why keeping headways as regular as possible is that difficult? Why if you want to provide a 12 vehicles per hour service, why not just dispatching one bus every 5 minutes and just that's it? And the issue is that keeping your buses in regular operation with regular intervals, it's a very unstable equilibrium. You move a little bit one of them, and all your equilibrium is lost, as I will show you. In some way, the vehicles act like magnets, in which they are attracted by the other buses, and that's the physics of the problem we are addressing. And to understand this, imagine a bus that is 5 minutes ahead of the bus that is following, and 5 minutes behind of the bus that is ahead, and all of a sudden this bus will stop on a red light that the bus ahead and the bus behind will not get. They will go get a green one. In this case, this bus, instead of going 5 and 5 minutes ahead and behind, now it's gonna maybe be 6 and 4. From now on, this bus, every time it arrives to a stop, will have more people waiting for the bus, and therefore it will be more loaded than usual. It will take longer to board, longer to alight, and the headway will start getting higher and higher. And of course, every time the bus will arrive to a new bus stop, the number of people that will be waiting for the bus will be higher again and again and again. On the bus that is behind, it's kind of the opposite effect, because it's only 4 minutes at the beginning. Well, when the bus arrives to the stop, there's fewer passengers than usual at the stop, and it will take lower and lower amount of time to board and alight, and therefore very fast the two buses will be together, like the magnets here I'm showing. So this is an issue. This is a very important element to understand when we're dealing with public transport operation. This also happens to metros, that any perturbation and the equilibrium is lost all around the world. And this is something that happens everywhere. Here we have a collection of pictures of London, of Beijing, buses of the same line, of Santiago de Chile, where you have buses of the same service arriving together, even though they were expected to be operating at a regular headway. And one question you could say, well, what's the big deal? And I'm going to argue that this is a very, very, very big deal for many reasons. So today, according to in this issue of regularity, I will be addressing 3 questions. Why do bus bunching happen? Second, what are the impacts? Third, does it have a solution? And the first one is why does bus bunching happen? According to the example I mentioned before of the traffic signal, the issue here is that any perturbation and this regularity is lost. And there are 2 main reasons, I think, or 2 main sources. One is the dispatching strategy, that even though a service should provide a service of one bus every 5 minutes, very often they are even not dispatched that way. So in this case, for instance, it's a service that we have of Santiago de Chile. This is a time-space diagram, and you can see here at the bottom, highlighted in green, how at the first station, the position 0, you have services that are being dispatched not regularly and not even close to being regular. And this happens because very often the operators don't pay attention. They don't have the incentives to do this, and they put the person in charge of dispatching the buses, probably the one that the new person coming to the company, the one that has the lowest salary, will be doing this job. Where I think it's a key job to dispatch as regularly as possible. And you can see downstream along the route how this poor regularity gets even worse, because as I said before, the intervals get increasing, and the bus tend to bunch. And where in a service where you were expected to perceive 3-minute headways, you end up with sometimes 20-minute headways, which is really damaging for the service. The second issue I have, the second source of these perturbations is in the speed variability of the buses. Not all the buses have the same variability, and this speed variability comes in the travel time or the dwell time. In the travel time, when a bus leaves a stop and moves to the next stop, what it will find is sometimes not all the buses will find the same congestion. So therefore, some of them will take longer, some of them will take the trip will be faster. Some of them will face traffic lights, and some of others will have in a green. Some will get a red, and therefore the travel time across the several buses between the 2 consecutive bus stops will not be the same. And also, of course, driver heterogeneity. Some drivers are faster, are more aggressive, and therefore it's clear that the travel time between one stop and the next one will not always be the same along all buses. And when they reach a station, you have a very similar situation in which the bus arrives, and not the passenger arrivals at each stop are different. Some of them will have the arrival, even though it may be a Poisson process or whatever process you want, it's still stochastic, and the number of passengers that we will be waiting is also a function of how it's proportional to how long the headway with the previous bus was. And if this has variability, of course, the number of passengers waiting there will change. There's also the issue of capacity of buses and stops, that if a bus arrives with very spare capacity, it will take much longer to board the people and the users. And therefore, it's very clear to see that the bus speed along the route is far, far, far from being a constant value. So this causes a lot of perturbations. And the question now, the second question is here, why is this important? What are the impacts? And the impacts are very, very severe, as I will show, affecting users and operators. Let's think first of users. And here I would like to comment on to base my explanation on this example. I hope you will enjoy it. And I would like you to pay attention to the example, because I will use it later on another part of the talk that I think you'll enjoy. So imagine you have a service that has to go through a bus stop. This is the first stop, and you will be providing a service that pass every 5 minutes. And we will assume that at this stop, you have 10 passengers per minute arriving. So every time a bus goes by, you have 50 people in each of these buses. And therefore, if we assume that the capacity of this bus is 80 people, when you have a great trip, you have 50 people in each bus, you've planned a fantastic service. However, if instead of dispatching every 5 minutes, you have buses coming every 2 and 8, 2 and 8, 2 and 8, then, well, people may come at 10 passengers per minute, but the first bus will leave with only 20 people, and the second one will depart with 80, 20, 80, 20, 80. And therefore, the green bus leaving after 2 minutes will have 20 passengers very happy on an 80-passenger bus, but the 80 passengers that will be in the red bus will be quite annoyed, because they will have a full bus where the comfort will be really, really bad. And not only that, notice that the 80 passengers will have waited much longer than what was expected at the beginning, and that's a much higher group than the small group that was lucky enough to wait very little for the 2-minute interval they enjoyed. So here we have an issue of lots of passengers waiting more than expected for a very crowded bus. And another element that you should be considering here is that the variability. I mean, when you get to the above system, you know exactly what to achieve. You will wait at most 5 minutes. However, if you come to the system below, you will know that eventually you can wait up to 8 minutes. And therefore, if you want to reach a certain appointment at a certain given time, you need to leave home much earlier just because of headway variability. And this is a waiting time that you will not suffer at your origin, you will be suffering at your destination because you have to arrive earlier just in case. So what are the impacts? Waiting times grow, as I was saying, and notice that the minutes of waiting are times that people are really don't like as much as traveling inside the vehicle. People will perceive them as 2 or 3 times worse than an in-vehicle time. And second, the variability grows. Third, the crowdedness grows because longer waiting times are correlated with high occupancy, as you can see from the example. And it's important to realize that users tend to remember the worst experiences. So if they have a bad experience in the week, at the end of the week, they may say, oh, I'm not sure I want to experience this again. And also there's operational impacts because now the dwell times are higher because there's going to be much more friction on people trying to board full buses, and this is something that happens worldwide. Board times and alighting grow, the operational speed drops, and the capacity drops. And because the cycle times variability will grow, now the operators will need more fleet and more drivers just due to variable cycle times. Because if you're at the terminal, you never know when the next bus is going to come, so that allowing you to dispatch your buses as smoothly as you would like. So this is an issue that is very relevant for the users and also for the operators. And furthermore, I would like to go into another area which I don't think we have realized as much, which is the issue of user satisfaction. And let me try to discuss with you how a passenger will rate the quality of the trip that there's experience inside the vehicle. It certainly should be worst when the occupancy inside the vehicle increases. So we should expect that this is something we have seen in the research we've done, that the user satisfaction decreases non-linearly as expected when the occupancy grow. I mean, if the bus is 10% full or 20% full or 30% full, you basically don't mind. But when you're moving between 85, 90, 95% full, every extra point, it's really damaging into your user experience. So let's think of our system, the system I showed you before, where we have to provide a service at a stop where passengers arrive at 10 passengers per minute, and we're planning a 5-minute interval as the example. In this case, each bus will arrive empty and should board 50 passengers and then depart. And if the bus capacity is 80 passengers, then we get, let's say, in this case, 63% occupancy. And let's imagine that according to our well-calibrated curve, this means that people will be satisfied at the 80% level. And we're quite proud, and we go to the transit agency director and we say, this is what we will be planning. We'll have a great service, 63% occupancy, and we will have a superb satisfaction of our users. Now, let's imagine now that instead, however, our super planned system, instead of being operated every 5 minutes, we still have the 12 buses per hour. Notice we're offering the same capacity, the same fleet, everything, but instead we'll have buses going every 2 minutes and 8 minutes, as an example I was showing. In this case, the bus leaving after 2 minutes will have only 20 passengers, and that's a 25% occupancy, while the other one leaving after 8 minutes will be completely full, right? So for the 25% capacity, we'll have a 90% satisfaction. This will be the happy riders will have, and we have after the 8 minutes, we'll have full buses that will have only 10% user satisfaction. And you can see that we have few guys that are very happy and a lot of the passengers that are pretty upset. Now, if we think and we average the level of satisfaction that we will be achieving, the level of occupancy will still be 63%. But then what will be the level of satisfaction if we average the two buses? When in this case, we'll have an average of 20 plus 80 divided by 2, we will have a 90 plus 10 divided by 2, we have 50% satisfaction. That would be the average. However, this is not even as good as we would like, because the situation is much worse, because really in the red bus here you see on the right, we have much more people than in the green bus you have in the left. And therefore, if we instead of averaging buses, we average people, then what we have is that the average occupancy perceived in this case by users will really be 85%, not 63%. And the satisfaction level will be only, in our example, 26%. So notice what has happened here. We went to the public transport agency and said, we are designing a service with a certain number of buses. We will be achieving a 63% occupancy. We will have 80% satisfaction, and you got your project approved. But all of a sudden, just because of high freeway regularity, bus regularity, now what we have is that we have only a 26% satisfaction, and we wonder why. And it's just regularity. So the issue here, the main concept I would like to pass is that how can we achieve these attributes is to be fast, to be low weights, comfortable, and reliable. The main element here is to increase speed, but also regular headways. And I think BRT should be rebranded as Bus Reliable Transit. I mean, reliability is much important than speed, in my opinion. Because if you have reliability, at the same time, you'll have low weights. Because the headways will be the same. It will be more comfortable, as the example showed, because all your buses will be evenly packed, and it will be reliable. And also we will be faster, because you will otherwise, with unreliable service, you have your buses usually traveling at the slowest bus. So this is a very, very relevant element for BRT. I think bus rapid transit should be rebranded as BRT, or at least as bus reliable transit. So finally, does it have a solution? And I will argue that yes, of course, we have a solution. And the solution is, I can think of many ideas. One is dedicated infrastructure, transit signal priority, so that you can coordinate and reallocate your buses along the route with traffic signal, giving them the opportunity to go over congestion. And very important, and this is the last part of the talk, real-time control at dispatching and along the route. And we have very nice examples here. So dedicated infrastructure, we've seen, as I said before, corridors worldwide, I think, and we've shown that when buses operate on corridors, they are much more reliable than out of them. In terms of traffic signal priority, we've seen this kind of interventions in which the bus can overpass the queue and have traffic signal priority, so that it can not only have a higher speed, but at the same time be less, its flow has less variability, because it can overpass congestion. And the last one, which I would like to comment, which is something that we've done here at the Center of Excellence, where what we've done is to implement some active control, not just know where the buses are and have something looking at a screen and calling the driver, but that's usually way too late. If you have that kind of system control, where it's based on people that are looking to screens and calling the driver, this is like similar to trying to separate the magnets when they have already collapsed. If the force you have to apply to two magnets to pull them apart is way too high in comparison what you need to apply where the magnets are starting to approach one another. That's what we would like. What we would like is to intervene the system, intervene the buses, not when they have already bunched with the bus ahead or behind, but when they are starting to get away from the position we would like. So these devices you see here, we have put them inside the buses in front of the drivers, to tell them when they are running okay, when they should be holding their bus, when, if possible, they should go faster, or when they should try to slow down a little bit. And this has done some, and this technology is based on this simulation we developed, or this optimization process we developed with one of my colleagues here called Felipe Delgado and Ricardo Giesen, in which what we did was to, unfortunately here, the simulation doesn't go. I'm very sorry. I will have to skip the simulation. But what we do here is that when the buses are going along the along the corridor, every time a bus arrives to a stop, what we do is to optimize or solve an optimization problem in which we decide if the bus should be hauled or should not be hauled, and if it should be hauled, for how long. And what we do here is that we can achieve a much better performance of a system, providing the kind of service you would like in terms of regularity, in terms of the how reliable the crowdedness or the crowdedness of the bus will be at each of the stops. So if you don't know, if you do nothing, what you will have is a very unreliable system and bunch system. However, we have developed this great tool, which is at the bottom. Unfortunately, the simulation cannot be uploaded here in the system. We can achieve a much smoother operation. And this is the pictures of the bus driver here with the screen on front, where it will it's telling the driver at every moment along the route when it should go faster or slower. And this information is based not only on where the bus is, but also where all the other buses are. The typical tools we have in the world are based on a schedule that you have developed the day before. And I think this is a very bad idea. You should not control your buses based on the schedule. You should control your buses on where the buses actually are. And what we've seen in Santiago is that when you do the opposite and try to control moving your buses towards a schedule, at the end, the bus drivers understand that the system is not worth it at all and ignore it all the way. Quite the opposite in this case. If you can give them the instructions that are coherent with the information on where the bus ahead and the bus behind is, when both of them are, the driver will understand the logic of why you're asking him or her to speed up or slow down. And on the left, you can see here the tool we've developed, where the circles in red are buses that are being told at this moment that they should be operating a little bit slower, and the buses that have a green circle around are buses where you're telling the buses that they should go a little bit faster. It's very interesting, and it works quite well. This is the kind of the findings of the company that is using it in Santiago from week 1 to week 17. How the fines, because of unreliability or irregularity of headways, are going down. So we're having good results, and we've been implementing this in many in several other cities as well. In the case of Bogota, we did an experiment that was very attractive. In this case, we did something very manual. We were seeing the instructions that we were receiving from the computer, from the optimization process, the solver, and we were sending information by phone to the drivers. And notice how this is the cycle time of the service along the day. For the red dots, which are the day we really use the system, how the variability of the cycle time is so much lower, and the cycle time never reach levels that are too high. So the idea of controlling the buses in advance, an active control, can reduce the average cycle time and can reduce very drastically its variability. So we've now implementing this in some other places. This is Route 5 in Malmo BRT. This is the streetcar in Cincinnati, where we are now implementing the system, and we are very optimistic and that the system can start to provide good results not only in Santiago, but also in some cities abroad. Final comments. There's the issue that we've been discussing lately about BRT, if we should have open BRTs or closed BRTs. The open BRT is a system in which the buses can enter and leave the corridor at any point, providing a much direct service for users, while the closed BRT is more like a metro, where buses never leave the corridor. And I think that here there's an opportunity also for the open BRT to have maybe the driver but let the driver drive the bus only when the bus is not in the corridor. So it would be interesting to have maybe as a first step towards automation of buses, where you can achieve this kind of regularity, is to have services in which the bus driver is there and he can get, or she can take care of everything except driving in the corridor, because driving in the corridor will be taken by the master system that is taking into account not just the bus but also the rest of the buses of the system. So that would be in this case the suggestion. And finally, realize that in the case of bus reliability, the drivers are really a critical link. We've shown in a paper that it takes very few drivers not obeying the instructions systematically, like boycotting, or eventually because they have a bus that is not equipped, to severely damage the benefits of automated and coordinated control. So if you are coordinating a system in which you think all your buses are equipped and will be obeying your instructions, but however, one or two of them are not, that will really damage your system. So drivers are here a critical link for regularity, and in the path towards automatizing the buses, I think instead of ignoring the buses, what I try to claim here is that the buses are a great opportunity to improve the quality of service of millions of people, and to get and to raise the performance and the promise of a full industry, which I think is in some way lagging very behind of other transportation modes. Buses are very often considered very second-tier technology, or kind of a service of the past, while I think that with this kind of technology, they can really be a key element of the urban mobility of the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan Carlos, for this great presentation. As you said, we have time for some questions or discussion. You can write them in the chat in the right side of the screen. Rafael Olarte is writing.
Okay, Rafael asked me if I can define the cycle time, and I'll go back to the slide here. So in this case, what we did was to go to Bogota and test and take a couple of services. This was a service is part of the a service that go into corridors, but also into the local streets. So I think they call them dual, but I don't remember the name. The cycle time here is the time taken by the bus to take the whole cycle until it reaches the same point again. So that would be cycle time, the time taken by a bus to go from one point, the whole cycle, and back. So, and here in this case, each diamond or each square would be one particular bus. And as you can see, on the days where we were not using the system, which are the blue dots, the blue squares, you have that on certain hours the cycle time was considerably higher than the average, and that the variability was much clear than in the case of the day when we use the system. I hope it's clear the answer, Rafael. Happy to take any other questions you may have. Jorge. Thank you, Juan Carlos. Okay, well, I'm glad you liked it. Well, Jorge is asking me, what about open BRT systems in which buses have to go into mixed traffic, not only in the corridor? He thinks that the unforeseen hazards increases given the fact that the bus would have to enter mixed traffic. How would you solve the issue of intersections where they need to stop for a red light and the other cars at the intersection, as the intersection doesn't stop? And what I try to explain, but maybe I wasn't very clear, is that I totally agree with you. I think that for an open BRT, what I would do is to have the autonomous bus. However, the bus driver will have to take control of the bus to every time the bus is out of the corridor. So I imagine a system in which the bus starts driving in mixed traffic, and when it gets into the corridor, then the control systems take control of the bus, and the bus driver relaxes and gets a great trip. Maybe he can be communicating with the passengers, whatever, until the last station when the bus departs from the corridor, and then the bus driver will take control again from the bus and enter into mixed traffic where we have not solved the problems you mentioned, which I think are very relevant. So my main point here is we should have autonomous buses during the time lapse of their cycles in which they're operating inside the corridors. And that would be a huge impact and a huge progress towards a much reliable service, even though not as perfect as we would like, because there will be a part of the service that would not be as reliable. Ngani Ndimbie, when does the Cincinnati pilot start? This is something we are expecting to start pretty soon. We have a couple of technical issues, but I think that should be in the next month. That will be my. We're planning to attend public transport fair in the US in October, and by then the Cincinnati should be already operating and showing some results. Sometimes implementing these technologies is not as fast as we would like. We've seen that in the computer, our buses, in our simulation in the computer, our buses are much more obedient and the process is much faster and simple to implement than in reality. In reality, you have to deal with drivers, you have to deal with companies, with bureaucracy. So it's not as fast as we would like. We're a research center trying to build a bridge between our research and the real problems, and that takes a while, not only in terms of the time, but also in the learning process for us. But it has been a great experience. Another city where we have this is in Punta Arenas in the south of Chile, the southernmost city, where we have implemented our system, but not only on the dispatching side, not the active control for the bus drivers along the route. And we're happy to consider collaboration with new cities anywhere.
We have time for one more question.
So Juan Pablo, do you think it will be possible to find the political willingness from the authorities to implement the system widely in the near future? I think that these kind of technologies need to need to show their impact, need to show the quality of service, need to receive the high user satisfaction reports, and then the authorities will realize that they are something they should demand. It's a new technology. Few systems in the world have some things like this, very few. But I think, yeah, I think that in the near future, this is something that will be happening, and it should. What I think is that at some point, the bus companies will realize that they should not be selling buses; they should be selling solutions. I mean, the same bus can be the symbol of a failed system or of a successful system, depending on everything else the infrastructure, the technology. So for the bus companies, I think they should realize that they need to pay, if they want their products to be symbols of success, symbols of products that are desirable by the cities, they need to take care of much more than just an equipment that rolls in a pavement. And therefore, I can imagine that this technology could be as buses now have a lot of little devices that were not there 20 years ago. I foresee that in 20 more years, this will be part of the basic bus that you will be selling to operate in a corridor, where it has to have a control system like this one. You would never sell a metro line or metros for a line without a control system. I think that in buses we should go in the same direction. Rafael says he missed one point. Could explain briefly the system in Cincinnati and Punta Arenas? Well, what we've done, Rafa, is to look at this our technology and try to put them in. Oh, no, sorry, no, not autonomous vehicles at all. We have no capacity of dealing with autonomous vehicles. What we're or to implementing. What we're trying to do is to provide the technology, so the autonomous technology for buses to be connected, so that but drivers need to obey the instructions they receive. And that's what we're doing in Santiago, and it's working reasonably well. In Punta Arenas, we started a similar project, but only at the dispatching point. And in Cincinnati, something that will be happening during the next month. That's what we expect. But it's based on information that the drivers are receiving through these tablets we put in front of them, to indicate them when to speed up or slow down. All right. Vicente liked the presentation, but I would like to know what is the view of bus companies in Chile when it comes to adopting new technologies in BRT. Are they positive about this? Are they willing to invest in innovation? I think here there's two. You can. I would expect bus companies to have two stimuli. One should be an internal stimuli, an internal force, making them realize that if buses don't go through this path, they will be considered more and more a second quality service in the city, and therefore the voices to replace them by something better should be stronger, and they would be facing a dark future. And second, I think since I think that the buses play a very, very relevant role in the urban mobility, in urban mobility, I think authorities will still expect to have high quality buses. So I think that the part of the force pushing buses to take this should also come from authorities, forcing them to show high level of reliability through indicators that affect the revenues they will be receiving. So if you don't have a high quality, high reliability, then you will not receiving the amount of money you would receive if you had a reliable service. And that's it. I think it's part of what authorities should be doing to incorporate this performance indicator associated to heavy regularity into their revenue function. All right, well, it's already 9:02. Some of the participants have left already. I would like to thank you all for listening to my talk. It was a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed it, and keep in touch of the work we're doing at the center. We will be delivering more of these webinars in the future, and I hope you enjoy them. And Also, I would like to ask you, each of you, to help us spread the word. So when you receive our webinar, invite others to also participate in your institutions or in the friends
goodbye, everyone.
in other parts. Thank you very much. Goodbye.